Tonight, I want to take you on a journey, not through headlines or rumors, but through truth. The world has heard the noise around Kabul's night attack, but few have paused to ask what really happened. This is not a story of blame, it's a story of lessons, of how misunderstanding can destroy nations and how truth can rebuild them. So stay with me to the end, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see conflict, power, and peace forever. The Kabul night attack shook the region, not only because of its intensity, but also because of the uncertainty that followed. The incident took place late at night, when most of the city was asleep, and within minutes, explosions and gunfire echoed across several districts. Witnesses reported seeing flashes of light in the sky, suggesting the possible use of drones or aerial bombardment. Others described a coordinated ground assault targeting specific locations, including security installations and diplomatic zones. What made the attack particularly alarming was the precision with which it unfolded, suggesting more than just a random act of violence. In the immediate aftermath, the Afghan authorities imposed a city-wide alert. Videos circulated online showing plumes of smoke rising from parts of Kabul, while emergency vehicles rushed through the streets. Civilian casualties were reported, though the exact numbers varied depending on the source. Some claimed the attack lasted for hours, while others believed it was over within a short but devastating burst of violence. What unified all accounts, however, was the shock. Kabul, already exhausted from years of instability, was once again thrust into fear and speculation. International observers, including the United Nations and foreign embassies, released cautious statements condemning the violence and calling for restraint. But as is often the case in such high-tension moments, information was scarce and emotions ran high. Within hours, different narratives began to emerge about who could have orchestrated the assault. Some analysts pointed toward regional militant networks still active after the withdrawal of international forces, while others speculated about external influence or proxy groups trying to destabilize the fragile Afghan political order. The timing of the attack also raised questions. It came at a period when Afghanistan was attempting to rebuild political and economic structures, and when regional powers were cautiously re-engaging through diplomatic and trade channels. Any large-scale violence at such a delicate time risked derailing progress and reigniting old suspicions among neighboring countries. What made the Kabul night attack particularly complex was its symbolic impact. It wasn't just about destruction. It was a reminder of how fragile peace remains in regions with overlapping interests, unresolved conflicts, and powerful external influences. The incident became more than a tragedy. It became a test of how Afghanistan and the world around it would respond to violence in an era where the line between truth and propaganda grows thinner by the minute. The relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan is deeply rooted in history, geography, and emotion. The two countries share more than just a border. They share tribes, languages, and traditions that flow freely across the Durand Line, a colonial boundary that has long been a source of contention. Over decades, this border has been both a bridge and a barrier, linking families and cultures while also dividing political identities. When tensions rise, historical wounds often reopen, and both sides find themselves trapped in a cycle of blame and mistrust that overshadows the deeper reality of shared struggle. Since the fall of the Afghan monarchy, Pakistan has played a complex role in Afghan affairs. During the Soviet-Afghan War, Pakistan became a key supporter of the resistance movement, hosting millions of refugees and facilitating international aid and arms to anti-Soviet fighters. While this involvement was initially framed as solidarity, it also created a long-term entanglement, one where Pakistan's internal security and Afghanistan's instability became deeply intertwined. In the years that followed, various Afghan factions saw Pakistan either as a protector or as an intruder, depending on which side of the political divide they stood. The rise of the Taliban in the 1990s further complicated the narrative. Pakistan was accused by some of supporting the group for strategic depth, while others argued that Islamabad's influence was exaggerated and misunderstood. Even after 2001, when the Taliban were removed from power and international forces entered Afghanistan, the old suspicions persisted. Whenever violence erupted, fingers were often pointed across the border before investigations could even begin. However, it is important to recognize that both nations have suffered immensely from terrorism and extremism. Thousands of Pakistani soldiers and civilians have died in attacks linked to the same militant networks that destabilize Afghanistan. This shared pain is often forgotten in political discourse, where blame becomes easier than cooperation. The region's complex history, shaped by foreign interventions, shifting alliances, and ethnic fault lines, has made it difficult to draw clear lines between victim and aggressor. Today, as both countries face economic challenges and the burden of displaced populations, their destinies remain connected. Without mutual trust and dialogue, every incident, like the Kabul Night Attack, risks being misinterpreted as aggression rather than a shared tragedy in need of joint understanding. After the Kabul Night Attack, international attention quickly turned toward determining who was responsible. Reports began to emerge from different intelligence agencies, global media outlets, and independent observers, but a clear answer never surfaced. The initial confusion stemmed from how swiftly the situation unfolded. The attack was sudden, its coordination precise, and its aftermath chaotic. Within hours, officials were scrambling to piece together evidence from satellite images, intercepted communications, and eyewitness accounts. However, the findings were fragmented, with no conclusive proof linking the event to any specific state or organization. International observers, including the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan and NATO monitoring groups, released early assessments that remain cautious in tone. They emphasized that while certain militant networks operating in the region might have had the capacity to carry out such an attack, there was no verified intelligence implicating Pakistan's government or military involvement. Instead, these reports pointed to the possibility of non-state actors, independent militant groups, or regional cells that exploit border instability to pursue their own agendas. These groups, often operating in the gray zones between nations, thrive on confusion and mistrust, using violence to reignite geopolitical rivalries. Several security analysts highlighted that Afghanistan's internal security landscape has become increasingly fragmented since the withdrawal of international forces. Dozens of militant factions now compete for influence, resources, and recognition. Some are ideologically motivated, while others are driven by power or profit. Such complexity makes attribution difficult. An attack might appear to have political motives, but could in reality stem from a localized conflict or rogue operation. Meanwhile, misinformation played a major role in shaping early public perception. Social media channels were flooded with claims and counterclaims, many of which originated from unverified sources or were amplified by automated networks. In the absence of official confirmation, speculation filled the vacuum. This digital chaos made it nearly impossible for the average observer to separate fact from fiction. What became clear to global analysts was that the intelligence gaps were not merely technical but structural. Regional communication between Afghan and Pakistani security institutions remains limited, and without proper collaboration, the real perpetrators often escape accountability. In such an environment, truth becomes the first casualty, replaced by narratives crafted to serve political or emotional needs, rather than facts grounded in evidence. When the Kabul Night Attack occurred, the speed at which information spread was almost as shocking as the event itself. Within minutes, videos, images, and voice notes began flooding social media platforms. Some showed explosions lighting up the night sky. Others featured people claiming to know who was responsible. Many of these clips were later proven to be either edited, taken from unrelated incidents, or entirely fabricated. But by then, the damage had already been done. Online platforms had transformed the attack from a national tragedy into a global spectacle, where narratives competed for attention more than truth. Traditional media outlets also struggled to keep up, with journalists restricted by safety concerns and limited access to official briefings. Many international networks relied on social media footage or second-hand reports. In this rush to publish breaking news, accuracy often gave way to urgency. The headlines that emerged in the first few hours were divided and emotional, some hinting at Pakistan's involvement, others suggesting internal Afghan rivalries, and a few proposing that a foreign intelligence network might have orchestrated the assault. Each version gained its own following, fueled by political bias or regional sentiment. The real challenge was that social media algorithms naturally favor sensational content. Posts that blamed someone or offered dramatic inside information received more engagement than balanced analysis. This phenomenon turned digital platforms into echo chambers, where users mostly encountered information that confirmed their pre-existing beliefs. For many, the online narrative became more influential than official investigations or statements from credible organizations. Governments and diplomats quickly realized they were no longer just dealing with a physical attack. They were battling an information war. In the midst of this chaos, propaganda networks took advantage of the confusion. Fake accounts and coordinated campaigns circulated claims designed to sow distrust between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Each post, each manipulated video added another layer of suspicion. This manipulation wasn't always orchestrated by states. Sometimes non-state groups or individuals seeking attention contributed to the misinformation spiral. The result was a fragmented perception of truth. Even as experts and officials tried to clarify the facts, public opinion had already hardened. What began as an act of violence on the ground evolved into a digital conflict of narratives, illustrating how modern warfare now includes not only weapons and strategies, but also the powerful battlefield of information and belief. After the Kabul Night Attack, one of the most urgent realizations among diplomats and analysts was that the region could no longer afford cycles of suspicion. For decades, every act of violence has been met with blame, retaliation, or silence. Yet none of these responses have brought Afghanistan or Pakistan closer to stability. The truth behind such events often becomes secondary to political convenience. That is why the only sustainable way forward lies in building frameworks of cooperation where both nations work together to uncover facts rather than weaponize them. The first step toward this is acknowledging that peace is not a favor one country grants to another. It is a shared necessity born from mutual suffering. When children and parents, joint investigations are essential. Instead of launching separate inquiries shaped by political agendas, Pakistan and Afghanistan must create a transparent system that allows for intelligence sharing and independent verification by international observers. Such collaboration not only strengthens credibility but also weakens the influence of groups that thrive on chaos. These militant or extremist networks rely on fractured communication between states to survive. When two neighbors coordinate their efforts and exchange real-time intelligence, they reduce the space in which misinformation and manipulation can grow. Communication between governments, media outlets, and civil society must also evolve. Too often, official silence during crises leaves a vacuum that is quickly filled by rumor, and communication, even if incomplete, builds public trust. It signals that both sides are committed to truth, not propaganda. Regional forums involving Central and South Asian countries could also serve as neutral platforms for crisis management and dialogue, ensuring that a single incident does not spiral into regional instability. Peace-focused cooperation further demands a cultural shift. The people of Afghanistan and Pakistan share centuries of kinship, trade, and migration. Rekindling those social and economic ties is as important as political dialogue. Trade partnerships, student exchanges, and humanitarian projects can serve as bridges where diplomacy struggles to reach. Each connection between ordinary citizens chips away at the walls of suspicion. Ultimately, the truth behind attacks like the one in Kabul will only surface when both nations choose collaboration over accusation. It is not an easy path, but it is the only one that leads away from endless blame and toward a future where truth becomes a means for peace, not division. In the end, the Kabul Night Attack was not just an event, it was a reflection of how fragile truth has become in our interconnected world. Beyond the explosions and headlines lies a deeper story about mistrust, misinformation, and missed opportunities for unity. Afghanistan and Pakistan are bound by more than borders. They share history, culture, and loss. The attack reminded the world that when nations fail to communicate, fear fills the silence. And when politics replaces compassion, the innocent always pay the price. What the world needs now is not another round of accusations, but a renewed commitment to understanding. Both countries, alongside the international community, must focus on dialogue, evidence, and collaboration. The real victory will not come from proving who is right, but from preventing the next tragedy. Peace is not born from blame. It grows through courage, cooperation, and truth. To the audience, may we all learn to question wisely, listen deeply, and speak with empathy. The future of this region, and indeed our world, depends not on how loud we shout, but on how sincerely we seek understanding. Thank you for listening with an open mind and an open heart. May peace guide our thoughts, truth strengthen our actions, and compassion light our path forward. Good luck to all who continue to believe that honesty and hope can still change the course of history.